you check the children? Show a little match sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is what
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Greetings, Fright fans, and welcome to the Horror Show. I am Jaime and Fuego, so very stoked to be back with all of you here on the channel. And I have a review of another thing that is in theaters, but it never really got a wide release in theaters. It was very limited. I thought it was going to get an expansion. It was going to be a little bit closer to my house, but nope. I actually made the effort with this one, though, because of the fact that I thought the premise for the new David Cronenberg film, The Shrouds, was very intriguing, about the fact that a man devises these devices in cemeteries to essentially monitor the the dead, the no longer living, after they are put into their coffins and into the ground. And so you can see the decomposition. He's got an app for it. You can 3D zoom in to see the decomposition of the internal body parts, you name it. You can zoom out and you can see the corpse. I mean, craziness. And so I was like, I'm very into this idea. It's Cronenberg, one of the most seminal, maybe the most seminal, director from the Great White North of genre that has ever lived in this modern era. And I mean, some of my personal favorite is James Woods' Videodrome. That's probably the case for a lot of people. Shivers is really kick-ass. The Brood. I mean, most American audiences, the mainstream, know him from, remaking The Thing. But, yeah, man, Rabbit, I think, is another one, if I remember correctly. Yeah, boy, was I really looking forward to this. And fuck was I disappointed, man. So, overall thoughts. This is a movie that starts strong, quite strong, and presents its setup. And you have this, I guess I'll just kind of combine overall thoughts with story, which we don't always do. But, yeah, so it presents this grieving, very wealthy man, and the love of his life was just recently put into the ground. And so the shrouds are essentially this full body sort of conductive suit, I guess is the best way I can describe it. And so that's how you can actually monitor in these different cemeteries. So he has his main one in Toronto, which is where he resides, but he's expanding and he's, setting them up in different spots like Budapest. And I mean, just all over the world he wants to have these because, he's very wealthy. And it's not just with the shrouds and these particular, he has his hand in various other bits of tech and whatnot. He is ever the tech savvy entrepreneur. And so that his grieving feels very real. He has this first date that he goes on that is a setup, from a friend of his, mutual friends of both of theirs, actually. And so he meets her at this restaurant and winery, which is right beside the Toronto cemetery. And so you can tell that the grief is very, very deep and everything. And, she's like, you're a fascinating man, but this is a little bit much for me, so on and so forth. And the big issue with this movie for me, and so this is where the story is tied in with the overall thoughts, because I don't think the acting is particularly bad in this, especially from our lead, even though his name, I did not double check on the letterbox, but I've seen this gentleman. I believe he's a French actor. I've seen him in a number of things, but compared to all of the other people who you can tell are more natural English speakers and everything, and deliver their lines with much more of a straightforward, pronounced, what's the word I'm looking for, a steadiness and kind of a confidence. His stuff is very kind of stutter-stepped, and you can just tell it's not just the accent, it's the rhythm of his speech pattern. Maybe I've seen him in some French films where he is speaking that. In any event, don't rack me over the coals for that. But while his performances, from seeing him emoting and his body language and his his nuance of physical performance and stuff is quite good. This movie turns into something drastically different in the final 2/3, where the concept is kind of pushed to the background because his main initial plot in Toronto is ransacked, and they're essentially trying to figure out how you had both a physical presence going into the ground and digging this stuff up, but also like the network has been hacked and there's a disruptive presence of like cyber terrorism practically that is going down and going against him. And then it also veers into two different love story subplots with him. Like, this guy's getting all the play, man. Like, we're talking, there is a, well, I don't want to spoil too much, okay? Even though I really would want to make this a spoiler review, he has two different opposing love stories. One is pushed to the wayside, and then they come back to it, and then another one seems to be a little bit more prominent in the midsection, and then they go away from it, but then they kind of come back to it. It's just, this movie is a mess. It's an absolute mess. And it was written by David Cronenberg, and so it really makes me wonder if I've seen films die in the edit bay in previous situations where maybe this was not supposed to be. I think it's like right around 2 hours-ish, maybe a little bit less. I should double check on the runtime, but it felt like this was maybe like there's a master 3-hour cut that doesn't trim subplots and doesn't completely abandon one thing and go to another thing, and then, but really the fact that it's like, okay, so, you know, less about, like, I thought that there was going to be more of the concept, more about a concept of death. And I guess there is, if you're going to talk about the classic Cronenberg stuff, as far as, you know, he's known for body horror, right? And so it does tie in to the slightest degree with the exploration of his grief with his wife, because his wife comes to him in dreams, but it's also associated, and so, like, she died in a very just nasty fashion. It was a debilitating disease that, like, limbs, like, you know, like a breast is taken off, you know, a piece of her arm, like, and she's in such a frail state near the end of their marriage, like, lovemaking could essentially, like, break her hip, all these different things. So there's all of there's a few really interesting ideas with regards to that, with regards to how our bodies decompose, with regards to, you know, but then it spends so much time on these other aspects of, well, who's messing with us? Is it the Chinese? Is it the Russians? And then there's subplots about, was his wife possibly having an affair? And then there's subplots about the people who worked on her body. And, you know, could there have been ulterior purposes, you know, with experimental drug she was doing? Like, there's all these interesting ideas and then a couple other really lame ones. And it tries to Frankenstein all this shizzle together. And it just comes off as not quite incoherent, but definitely unfocused, in my opinion. And perhaps this was the burden of expectation, man, but by the end of this movie, I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. That's how we're wrapping this up? Because it doesn't even really feel like it is properly. So, yeah, this is one of the more ranty reviews that you guys will ever see from me, because I always try to, and I will still say that it's beautifully shot, you know. The acting is pretty solid across the board from the entirety of the ensemble. From our main character's dead wife's sister is quite good. There is this blind woman who shows up about halfway through the film. The scenes with her are pretty good. Man, I will say Cronenberg's kinky in this one. And not that it feels out of place, but it just... Man, and there is another stupid as hell subplot with this AI, and also you got Guy Pearce in this movie too. I can't help but mention him, having just enjoyed his performance quite a bit in, The Brutalist, you know, which I thought was the, you know, best picture of last year, at least as far as the Oscar nominations. But yeah, so Guy Pearce has this supporting role, which it's fleshed out a little bit and then completely veered away from, and so once again, a hodgepodge, unfocused. Sound design isn't, like, Cronenberg has money. I would imagine he, like, found his own self-financing, and then just, you know, this is not a big studio sort of effort, you know, I believe. And once again, he wrote it, he directed it. It was just, damn, it was such a disappointment to me. Especially, it's another movie that I've seen this past year where amazing setup, and where they could have gone with it and what they could have explored, didn't really do, couldn't stick the landing. God damn, was it a disappointment. So, since it's just getting me upset even talking about it, guys, I'm going to leave it at that. So, there you have it. That's my thoughts on the Shrouds, the latest from the icon, David Cronenberg. I'm not going to say he's at, like, I think of Cronenberg's kid, Brandon, who his stuff, you know, antiviral and goodness, Possessor, and then Infinity Pool. Like, it's kind of, is it like Stephen King and Joe Hill, where I've liked Joe Hill's more recent stuff much better than a lot of his father's stuff, his iconic father, his legendary father. I don't know, but I didn't really care much for Crimes of the Future either. I thought that was another one with like great conceits and setups and just poor execution, lack of focus, despite great production and set design and things of that nature. So yeah, this kind of falls into a similar category, guys. So I'm going to leave it at that. I extend the grande gracias up in Jaime and Fuego. You can find Juan on all social media sectors: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Tiki-Talkies, all that shizzle. But biggest thing to do here is to like, share, and subscribe on the bottom. Comment if you have seen this. Am I being too hard on this? Did I miss the point? Am I going to have any of those commenters? If you have like a very legit argument for why I'm completely wrong with my take about this, please present them, to quote South Park. So anyway, guys, gracias, thanks so very much once again, and until next time, Fright fans, remember, stay scared. And watch this if you can. Make up your own mind, because I really want to hear some other opinions about it, because I haven't seen like anybody review it.